Hey guys, hope you're all doing good in the old YouTube land. So today we're going to talk about how to buy an XR650L, or my top 5 things that I would look for when buying one of these bikes, or really any bike, but mostly we're going to focus on this bike. So right on, let's go get a camera set up and enjoy this beautiful day and some of these sights you guys are going to see, and we'll talk about it. Shortcut, where are we here? Yeah, sure. Beautiful. So yeah, snow's leaving us fast. It's like, I think it's plus 10 right now, and as usual I'm way overdressed, but we're still going to find a little snow for sure, and I'm pretty low. Wow, there's usually lots of snow in there. You guys see that? It always looks like nothing, hey, on the camera. It looks like, well, no big deal. That was gnarly. Yeah, that's really gnarly. Sweet. Oh boy, that's steep, you guys. Look at this, here, let me show you guys. I've been filming here lots lately, mainly because up above there's quite a bit of snow, but check this out. Just love this view. Can you guys see the lake, the colors in the lake down there? So yeah, like I was saying, you guys, let's get started. We're going to talk about my 5 top things I would look for if I was in the market for one of these bikes. I know spring's, in my opinion, the best time to buy these bikes is fall because everyone's looking to sell, and spring is probably not the best time to buy, but it seems to be the time when everyone gets excited and does start buying these bikes. So let's go over some of these pointers I'm going to give you guys. Sorry for the wind too, it's pretty windy up here, so hopefully, well, I guess if it gets posted it's not too bad, but I wanted to give you guys that backdrop. Not bad for Canada, hey? So right on, let's start with number 5, and this one's pretty obvious, you guys. This is, I gotta put the Googles on. I got a few things I wrote down here. So number 5, this is probably one of the more common things, but you guys should look for the cracks in the frames. Personally, I don't know if I have the unicorn of 650Ls, but I've had no problems with mine, but my buddy has had problems, and I do see people posting online that their frames do crack, and the 2 most common places I've seen is right here, right behind where your foot is on the left side, and right at the subframe, probably from people overloading them is what I would think, but those are the spots that I've seen on the 650L anyways. So I'd probably look out for those and just go over the frame in general. You can usually spot cracks pretty easy. There's a bit of rust or whatever. Number 4 thing I would look at is probably the obvious things like tires. I mean, you don't want to be buying new tires if you just bought a new bike. And here's one that probably you guys aren't thinking about, and that's your spokes. I can't tell you how many bikes I've bought and the spokes are frozen, so you can't adjust. If you got warped wheels or things are bent, you literally gotta, I mean, I've got lucky with putting WD-40 in the nipples there and then just letting them soak overnight, and then put some vice grips on and slowly work them loose. But I've had a lot that I couldn't repair, like they're just seized. Stainless steel and aluminum seems to, you know, they weld together almost. So keep an eye, check your tires, your spokes. Those are the most common things. And obviously sprocket and chains, I mean, all the obvious stuff. When you're doing that too, you should have this bike off the ground. Like if you can bring a lift to inspect it, Some of these other tips I'm going to give you guys, you're going to want to have it off the ground so you can rock the wheels back and forth, check the bearings, all that common stuff. That's number 4 stuff. Okay, carrying on number 3 here. So number 3 is kind of one you wouldn't really think about, but I would say checking over some of the wiring, like your electrical system. I know people have problems with the CDIs. I've never had any problems, but some people do. I don't know if that's certain years or what's going on with that, but that's kind of a weird one. And you can't really check that. I mean, the obvious thing you're going to do if you're looking to buy a bike is fire it up, and the best thing to do is take it around the block or take it for a short ride. And if it starts and runs, then I would say there's no CDI issues. But another common thing, this is really common in the Euro bikes, like the Betas and the KTMs, because I had problems on my 450, and that's right where the steering, where the electrical, you know, the harness folds. That's from going back and forth with your steering. You know, some Hondas are pretty good for that. They don't have too much trouble, but some of the Euro bikes, I couldn't believe my KTM. Probably 5 of the wires were cracked and a few of them were broken right in half. So that's definitely one thing to check, is your electrical, you know, your battery, all that kind of stuff, all the lights and everything. I mean, those are all pretty obvious things. So that's number 3. Number 2, this one's kind of, like I said, you should try and have the wheels off the ground. And number 2 would be your suspension. You know, your fork seals on the bikes, you know, you don't want to have to do your forks, because then the oil, if it's leaking oil, it gets all over the rotor, and then you got to do the disc, the brake pads, and oil leaks drive me nuts. So yeah, you don't want to be dealing with fork seal leaks or shock seal leaks. So suspension, number 2 would be probably my checking over your suspension. You know, like I say, get it off the ground, grab the rear tire and lift it up and down, see if there's any play in the bearings. These are pretty good. The Hondas, I've never had any trouble with mine. This year does have grease nipples on all the things, so that's another thing I should mention, is you could look for the older years that do have all the grease nipples, because I've never done my bearings on this bike and they're all still within, you know, there's no play in them at all, but I do grease them every year. So that's a huge benefit right there. I mean, it's a pain to do your suspension bearings. If you've ever done them, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, suspension, bearings, fork seals, shock absorber. I think the number 1 thing, I'm going to give you guys a bonus too after the number 1 thing, and this is probably the most important thing I look for when buying a used bike. Number 1 is obviously the engine. Now, I mean, there's so many things to go over with the engine, but the first thing you're going to want to do is start it and take it for a ride. If it runs, I mean, you're halfway there. What I would do is, what you could do if the owner or the seller will let you, is pull your sprocket cover. It's 2 Allen bolts. It takes 2 seconds to take it off. I forget the size. I think it's a 4 or 5 millimeter. Pull that cover off, and then with the rear tire off the ground, just rock the tire back and forth, and you'll see if there's any play on that counter shaft, because a lot of guys do have trouble with that. I personally don't think there's any issues with that situation. I think it's rider error, being in the wrong gear, not shifting when you should, not taking care of your chain. I mean, at the end of the day, Honda hasn't changed anything on this bike, so there's obviously no problem, or they would have changed it. But the bike didn't come with a cush drive, and if you guys aren't familiar, the cush drive is the rubber, they're like rubber fingers in the kind of in the hub behind the sprocket. Most bikes have that. The XRs don't, so that would have helped with that situation. But that's one thing to check. And the clutch basket actually has springs, I think, is that lateral, so it does have a bit of a cush drive in there, sort of. But it's one thing, I wouldn't worry about it if it was like mine. I changed mine out in 2020. That's because I did the 2nd and 5th gear, and I also added a kickstart. So I changed this shaft out for the bigger spline one off the XL500s. Like it's got huge splines. I think there's only 6 on there or something. But that's what I did with mine. But if you want to check that and make sure, I wouldn't be scared if there's a little bit of play. Even if there was half the spline, you know, moving a little bit, I wouldn't worry about it, because it takes an awful long time to wear that out. Mine was only half worn out. I'll post up a picture here. And, you know, almost 30 years later, or 25 years it took to get to that point. And I ride it pretty hard. I'm sure you guys have seen me ride. So I wouldn't worry about that shaft if it's a little worn. If it's completely worn, then it's something to consider for sure. Definitely check for valve cover oil leaks. That's pretty common on these bikes. And it's kind of a pain to change because that valve cover doesn't come off real easy. I mean, you can get it off, but it's hard to get that off. I mean, that's one thing to look out for. If it starts quick, then your valves are probably in spec. I mean, obviously you're going to want to change it, check them if you're buying a new bike, but I mean, some of the stuff you can't check, like camshaft and stuff like that. But I mean, like I say, the number one thing to do is take it for a ride around the block. And if it starts and stops, you know, while on your ride, start and stop it a few times. If it fires right up instantly, then it's probably, you know, the carb's probably all in spec and nice and clean, and the valves are probably, you know, they're within spec, I would say. You can also listen for weird noises. That's going to be a dead giveaway too. So you can also check for the obvious thing. Like I said, check for leaks, but check for smoke. You know, on deceleration, does it smoke? Like if you go around the block, rev it up a little bit and let off. Does it smoke when you start it up? That could just be valve seals. I mean, that's all pretty common stuff to look for. So that's my top 5 things I would look for on a bike. I probably missed some stuff, so drop it in the comments below if you guys think of anything I missed. And here's the bonus tip. This is the number one thing that I look for on any used bike, and that's if I can find a bike with very low owners. Like a bike that's only had one owner is the perfect bike to buy because you have the history of the whole bike. You know, like when I bought this bike, it probably had several owners and it was in rough shape. That's why I got it so cheap. And I pretty much rebuilt everything on the bike. But if you buy a bike that's had 10 owners, then it's had 10 oil changes or 10 different types of oil, 10 different opinions on how to look after the bike. Like, that's probably the most important thing, is look for a bike with not very many owners, or that way you can find out the history on the bike. So yeah, that's probably the top 5 with the bonus tips, 6 tips that you guys should look out for. I probably missed some stuff, but let me know in the comments below, you guys. No, this one's not for sale if you guys are thinking that. And these bikes are going to get hard to find eventually. I think they're discontinued in Canada for a few years now, so I would start, like, I've got 2 spare motors. I'm starting to hoard up parts because I intend on having mine forever. I'll have lots of different bikes, but this is the one that will always be in my garage when I don't have a bike, and it can be my go-to bike. So yeah, well, that's the one. And I should probably mention there is a catch with looking for these bikes, you guys, and that's the potential that, you know, due to the bike's age, if you're looking at older ones, it's been around for a while, so it may have been around the block a few times. So it's a bit of a catch-22 there because, you know, who knows what's been done to it, or, you know, whatever. But like I say, low owner history is the number one thing I look for, because that, you know, I've bought bikes without even test riding them. I found out that the guy bought it brand new. It's only got 50 hours on it. I just load it up and away I go, because I know the guy. You can get a feel for the guy too, if he's nice and, you know, he's not there to rip you off. He's just looking to buy. Also find out the reason it's for sale. That's another good tip I could give you guys. So yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel, and if you know anyone looking for a new bike, definitely share this video with them, because I'm really enjoying the XR content. I got lots of stuff to share with you guys, so stay tuned. I got lots of videos coming on my other bikes too, so don't think it's all going to be XR stuff. I can't wait to get my CR500 going and my 250 and all that stuff. Right on, you guys.